The Fantasy Six-Pack Hour. With your hosts, Joe Bond.
You're awful.
And A.J. Applegarth.
It's Sin Shu Chu. It's a mouthful.
All right. Welcome back to the Fantasy Six-Pack Hour. My name's Joe Bond, founder of FantasySixPack.net. With me, as usual, A.J. Applegarth. What's going on, man? How's the holidays?
It's good, man. Good. Nice little break from work. Still had to work Monday, but we had a shortened day. The office closed at noon, and I was still there for a little bit longer than that. But it was nice. Got out, got a little bit of last minute shopping and some food shopping done. Wasn't too crazy though. I was kind of surprised. So that was good. But yeah, it was a good little break. We stayed local and had some family over to the house and just kind of took it easy. So it was good. How about yourself?
Yeah, it was nice. We didn't have any last minute stuff to do, thankfully. We actually planned ahead this year for the first time ever. But we stayed local as well for the first time in a while. And it was just nice to be able to stay up, let the kids, stay here, let the kids play with the toys that they got instead of just being like, okay, hope you liked what you got because we got to leave it here and get on the road. That sucks, man. But no, it was good. I fortunately have a full week off because I work for a university and the college is closed. So yeah,
nice.
There you go. But anyway, man, let's get to the show. So we're going to have a little fun today. Just kind of recap the season. Nothing too serious. Look, it is what it is at this point, right? There's no super analysis to give. That's to come later to look at next year. Let's just kind of look at this year and see what happened. But before we get to that, let's start off with my favorite segment. And go? No, it doesn't want to go? What in the world is going on here?
Beer.
There we go. We'll try it again. So yeah, beer of the week. Going back to a oldie but goodie, man. I figure I finished strong. Seemed like this was my brand of choice during the season, as you made fun of me for it a few times. But I'm gonna go back to it to finish it off. Felt it was necessary. Stone Ruination Double IPA. Said it before. Awesome beer. One of my favorites. 8.5%. It's an unfiltered double IPA. It does when you pour it into a glass, it does have that kind of hazy, unfiltered look to it. But it doesn't taste like a lot of unfiltered beers. It's just solid. It is strong. So you gotta be in the mood for it. But I give it a 4, maybe a 4.25 on Untappd. I just checked it in, but didn't look for some stupid reason. But it's solid. I like it.
Solid indeed. I myself ventured up to PA today for a couple of different things, see some friends and whatnot. But I picked up a sixer of Deschutes Fresh Squeezed IPA.
That's a solid beer. I like it.
This is such a tasty little treat. And Deschutes Brewery is actually the 5th largest craft brewery in the nation.
Is it really? Wow.
Yeah, out in Bend, Idaho, which I feel like, or I'm sorry, Bend, Oregon. Oregon is next to Idaho. But yeah, the that whole Oregon, Washington, California, I feel like is really the main mecca of craft beers, anyways, and
so
kind of really started it going. But yeah, I mean, this is just such a good beer all around. I mean, it's only 6.4 ABV, so it's not super strong, but it's just an easy drinking, tasty IPA.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was going through my Untappd list this past week just to kind of see stuff that I like that I haven't had in a while, and that one is at the top. I need to go find it again. It's been a long time since I've had that. Anyway, championship weekend has come and gone. Hopefully you guys did well, took our advice, especially the waiver wire advice. We'll get to that. But for me, I was able to take down both championships that I was in. Dude, I'll tell you, I wasn't sure, especially with all the injuries I had. I had the Gurley injury. I was like, oh no, I don't know what to do here. But was able to get it working here for me. In my startup dynasty league that I share with Keenan, friend of the show, used to write for Fantasy Six Pack. We were the second seed, lost in the semis, like a lot of top 2 seeds did, seemed like, including the number 1 seed in that league, but then ended up taking out the top seed in the third round, in the third place game. Yeah, let me talk. Funny kind of tidbit about that league is there's a, like your dynasty league, there's an award or money prize for getting the most points in the season or for the week. And we scored the second most points all year long. We never won that prize. Never. We crushed everybody in week 16, of course. So had we just gotten to the finals, we would have won. But you know what? Can't say that, really. We didn't get there. So we got third place. Still, finished in some money. So we at least got our money back, I think is what it is. So I'll take it and just rally up for next year. But I know you were only in the one for money. How'd you end up faring?
Oh, I was in a lot for money, but I didn't win any of them. So, I only had the. Oh, well, yeah.
Well, I meant this past week.
One bracket. Yeah. Sorry, one winner's bracket in the league that I run, and like you said, a lot of the top seeds that went out last week, I was one of them, and then of course followed up with scoring 249 points. In this past week. So yeah, I mean, it stings a little bit to be out, but I'm very happy to announce that Dennis Sosick, Fantasy Six Pack friend and friend of the show here,
absolutely,
is the champion in my league. So congrats, Dennis, again on air. He really just plowed through. He was a 6 seed too. This is back-to-back years now that a 6 seed has won and actually beat the same guy. I kind of feel bad. I kind of feel bad for my buddy. He's like the Los Angeles Dodgers of my fantasy football league.
That's kind of funny. Or the Bills.
Yeah. So throwing a little shade LA's way. Take that, Magic Johnson. Stop poaching Phillies players. Anyway.
Okay.
But yeah, so that was it was a hard fought battle for Dennis. Early on it was real tight, and then he just ran away with it at the end. He was actually, before the late games even started, I think he already had it kind of locked in, had a lead, and then that guy didn't have much left other than Drew Brees. In typical Drew Brees fantasy playoff fashion, he didn't really show up and get that guy many points. So
nah, he kind of didn't do great. But speaking of that, let's talk about just kind of some of the guys that blew up this past week that, a lot of these teams that got this far were relying on, or, especially with 5th and 6th seed, getting there all over the place. It seemed like, look, I'll start. Guy got me and Keenan the third place finish. Easily got us the third place finish. Aaron Rodgers, 43 fantasy points. You're talking about one pissed off mother effer, dude. He was not happy that he was going to possibly be shut down. He wasn't happy. He was, excuse me, he wasn't happy that they got knocked out of the playoffs. Dude, he paid angry. I feel bad for the Jets, man. They got all Aaron Rodgers. Although, hey, they put up their fair share of points too, but that game went to overtime, and Rodgers just was like, "Nope, I got this, guys." So 42.9 in like a fairly typical scoring format. I just kind of rounded up to 43. But that was a monster performance. Antonio Brown, 44. I mean, I actually had him and A-Rod in both of those in the same team that got me third place. I mean, that's why we just demolished everybody that week. I mean, got over 80 points from two guys. I mean, that's almost impossible to beat. And then the last guy I wrote down, I mean, there's so many more. I mean, Christian McCaffrey, I mean, there's tons of guys that just performed so well this past week. This was a very high-scoring week for fantasy championships. But Zach Ertz, big bounce-back performance, 35 points, week 15. I mean, just dreadful. Honestly, one of the reasons why I didn't make the finals in one of my leagues. I mean, he was just awful. And 35 points this week, just was catching everything. So, kudos to all these guys that got you there. I know you've got another one written down. I was going to leave it for you. So go ahead, man.
Well, we'll just call him Saint Nick this week because it was Christmas. But yet again, man, Nick Foles is just... He's the Philadelphia darling. This was his potentially last home game in Philly, of potentially his career. I mean, whether he decides to, hang him up after this year for good, or if not, somebody's going to want to go after him. And honestly, I think the Eagles, if he's going to contemplate signing again and playing, the Eagles need to do whatever they can to give this guy another one-year deal. I don't care. Give him $30 million. I don't care. I mean, he's been amazing these last few weeks, and he's got this team back, thinking about that underdog mentality that they had last year that drove them to the Super Bowl. Now they have, instead of the dog mask, they have a black ski mask that they wear, apparently, because they robbed people of plays or wins or something. So if they get a sack, I think they put this mask on. It's kind of like it almost reminds me of the chain that Miami wears, Miami University. But
yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, so Foles finished out, with 30.9 points. Definitely solid outing from somebody who was, not really drafted, but picked up potentially, or was an awesome play for DFS. And I'm mad at myself because I was very close to just writing out his $4,700 DraftKings price in all of my matchups, and I went elsewhere. So they still need Minnesota to lose to get into the playoffs, so we'll see what happens this week. Minnesota's going up against the Bears, and the Bears potentially are still playing for the 2 seed in that first round bye, so they need a little help with LA getting beat, which I don't know if that'll happen or not, but I'm hoping that they come out and play and take Minnesota out so the Eagles have a shot, and then who knows what'll happen.
Yeah, there's a couple playoff seeds on the line, so there's going to be a lot of jumbling all over the place. But so, like I kind of alluded to earlier, I really, really hope you took our advice and picked up all these waiver wire guys this past week. In every single league I was in the championship in, I kind of let third place go. It's a dynasty league. A lot of these guys were owned, but so there's nothing I could do about it. But in my redraft leagues, I went out and I just dropped everybody that I didn't care about, that I didn't think was going to be all that great, and all my injured guys, right? Who cares? They're obviously not coming back this week. And as soon as somebody was ruled out for the week, I dropped him and picked up somebody else. I just said, nope, my opponent is not getting anybody. It doesn't matter. But all these guys, Jamal Williams, Elijah McGuire, Robbie Anderson, who I said was my pickup of the week, almost 30 fantasy points. CJ Anderson, he wasn't on my list because who knew he was going to be the starter.
I did put him on our list for pickups last week, though.
Did you?
We both agreed that it was unlikely that he was going to end up getting the bulk because we still didn't know if Gurley was even playing at that point.
Yeah, but it was kind of crazy to think, like, yeah, I do remember actually now talking about him, but it was just kind of like, I guess if you're desperate. But as the week went on, it was just like, you had to go get this guy. And
yeah.
But, C.J. Anderson, Damian Williams from, a week or two ago, obviously was a huge pickup. All these guys, monster. I had Jamal Williams, Elijah McGuire, and Robbie Anderson in one of my leagues. Over 80 fantasy points between three guys. I mean, I lost Gurley and Hunt in that league, and I still won the championship because of those three.
Well, yeah, Dennis had Damian Williams. He picked up in the playoffs. He picked up Robbie Anderson right before week 16, and he picked up Jamal Williams as well. Plus, he picked up Baldwin, Doug Baldwin, because the guy that had him. I think I talked about it on the show. If not, I talked about it to you off air. But my buddy decided he needed to play someone because Baldwin was ruled out 2 weeks ago.
That's right.
And he dropped him for David Moore. And I told him, I was like, yeah, dude, Moore's the best pickup that you have available. And go for it. And then Moore got him a 0, which Baldwin would have got him a 0. But hey, Baldwin pretty much, I don't want to say ruined that guy's season, but he definitely hurt it because he was out so much. And then, dude, he's just been lights out the past couple of weeks.
Baldwin was fantastic. He's one of the high scorers. I mean, he I think he was 24, 20, 29 points himself. I mean, he was way up there too. So, yeah, 25.6 in a PPR. I mean, he was great too. So yeah, it was definitely waiver wire to the rescue at the end of the season with all the injuries we had. But it wasn't like these guys came in and they got you half as many as Gurley. I mean, C.J. Anderson busted out for 160 plus yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, like, okay, maybe no, 167 yards and 1 touchdown. Sorry, but I mean, like, that's basically a Gurley day, right? I mean, that's 1 for 1, man. Like, you don't usually see that kind of. Your stud goes out, your guy comes in, backup comes in and just outperforms him basically. Jamal Williams. I didn't really like Jamal Williams, but just, dude, there was nothing out there. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna start him and see what happens. And game just blew up, and it was all over the place, man. And that's why we saw so many 5 and 6 seeds make it. I was in almost every league I was in. The 1 and 2 seed lost. They didn't even make it to the finals. The 5 and 6 seed made it to the finals in at least 4 of my leagues. At least 4. I was in the finals in one of those leagues. So the fantasy 6-pack league was 5 for 6, actually, the SAF league.
Yeah.
So, speaking of that, I want to give a congratulations to Kevin Huo for taking first in the Fantasy Six-Pack League and beating out Tyler Getman by just over a point. Getman got robbed, by the way. Philip Lindsay getting hurt. I mean, you had to think that Lindsay was going to squeak out another point, right? So
yeah,
that sucks big time. But, both those guys, phenomenal seasons. But again, the 5 and 6 seeds, I mean, anything can happen. This is the thing that we tell you time and time again. Don't give up just because you're not the 1 and 2 seed, just because you're not 12 and 2, right? Like, go out there, make moves. It can matter. Once you're in the playoffs, anything can happen. So I'm going to run down a list here of might be a little boring, but, just to kind of prove to you that, like, hey, we actually do have success here at Fantasy Six Pack. I'm going to run down a quick list, as quick as I can, of all the money finishes that we had, like finishes in the money, I guess I want to say. Basically, the entire Fantasy Six-Pack football staff kind of collaborated all year in this analyst league that Keith Lott helped us get into, and worked together. Keith put it together, did most of the in-season work. I believe Richard drafted the team, although, as Richard pointed out on Twitter, it was nothing like the team he drafted. But whose team is at the end, right? I mean, that's usually what happens. But had a lot of success during the year. Kind of lost it at the end. Had a couple of injuries hit us, and then made some savvy moves here at the end, and was able to, with the help of Aaron Rodgers, take down the championship. So big win there. A huge league to take down. Mentioned Kevin before winning the Fantasy Six-Pack League. He also finished in the money in 2 more of his leagues. Tyler, who finished second in the Fantasy Six-Pack League, finished second in 2 more. That sucks. Sorry to say, cool you finished second, but you finished second in 3 leagues. I've been there. It sucks, man. It's the worst. You're like, I couldn't get one of them. Just one? Come on.
Seriously.
Dude, it feels like every year that shit happens to me. I'm in the semifinals in 4 or 5 leagues, and I'm either third place in all of them or second and third in all of them. It just so happens, man. So Tyler, I feel your pain, man. I know how it feels. You're like, yeah, you're gonna look back and be like, cool, I got second, but right now it sucks. It hurts. You're like, I'm that close. I'm that close. Bobby Shepard, he finished second in a league. He lost by point, and I wrote 0.5. I checked it before the show, 0.05. He lost by 0.05. Guess who he had? Philip Lindsay. So, yeah, he needed a lot less than Tyler Getman did, too. So, not saying Philip Lindsay lost it for him, but, the Monday night game, you're watching it, and you're like, oh, I just need, another yard, 2 yards. Boom. What? Brutal, man. Michael, I wrote Michael Triv. He finished 3rd and 4th in 2 of his leagues. I believe 4th place pays out in that league, so probably a 14-team league. Dennis Sosik, as you mentioned, he finished 1st in your league, finished 1st in another, and 3rd in another, so big congrats to him, taking down 2 leagues. Chris Luft finished in the money in 3 of his leagues, and then Tyler Thompson finished 1st and 3rd in 1 of his leagues. And, Tyler made sure to point out he finally took down a league he's been in for 10 years. So, Tyler is friends of the show know he's more of a baseball guy. So, big kudos to him for finally taking down that league. That's huge for him. But a lot of success going around here. I know, Richard finished pretty well too. He didn't give me his. I asked for everybody's list today. So this isn't everybody's. But a lot of success for the staff. And just more to come, man. Let's bring on baseball and win everybody some championships again. So I know I got hit up on Twitter, people thanking me for giving advice this year. Not that I'm the only person who gives them advice, but it does feel good that they recognize that I'm able to help, and it feels good that I'm able to help too. That's what I do this for. I really love doing it. So
yeah, I had like I said, I had the most points overall last week in the league that Dennis won, but that was for 3rd place, and hosted the guy that I played who had a strong team. He was the 2 seed. He had a strong team all year, but he just got riddled with bad play and not enough quality pickups towards the end of the year. So that happens, and I definitely more than doubled up his points. Put it that way, going into that last week, I still had, or the last game, I still had Philip Lindsay, and I was sitting at 242, and Lindsay only got me 7 points. So it didn't matter. It didn't matter for that matchup, but dang. I was really hoping to beat 250. So
242.
0.6 points ridiculous. I needed. Come on, Lindsay.
I mean, hey, that just proves right there how high scoring of a week this was. It was absurd, really high scoring. So
it was absurd, but
all right, man. Well, what? Sorry, you got one more thing to add?
I was just saying, let's move it on.
Yeah, so how we want to close out the year for real here is we want to do our fantasy MVPs and then our all-waiver team. And so I'll explain here. We're going to start with the fantasy MVPs. So fantasy MVPs, there's no. I guess just like the NFL MVP, there's multiple things to consider, and there's just overall, play, points. But some of the things that AJ and I look at when we pick our individual teams here, and we're going to pick one guy from each of the major positions. We're leaving out kickers and defense, whatever. Um, I look at things like consistency week in and week out. I look at where you were drafted. Like, look, Antonio Brown, we get it. Gurley, we get it. You guys were drafted first and second overall in your position, and you finished first or second at your position. So you kind of hit it. I'm looking at guys that kind of like propelled your team, like made up for guys above you that you may have drafted and didn't perform as well, right? That were difference makers because of where you drafted them. And I'm not always looking at guys like the guy drafted in the 10th round. I might look at somebody who was in the second round but finishes like RB1 or RB2, right? Because that matters. Like, that's a huge, like, there's like sometimes 8 or 9 guys drafted in front of him. So I'll let you start here, man. Let's do QBs. What you got?
All right. So my QB MVP is Mr. Shamrock, Andrew Luck. This is a guy who was definitely drafted way later than all of the top guys, because he was such an injury risk coming into this year.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you really didn't know what you were getting out of him. Just looking at this list on Fantasy Pros, sorry, he ended up being the 9th quarterback taken at 83 overall, and that's behind Cousins, Wentz. So guys that you kind of figured were going to go earlier. In my 1-2 quarterback league, I grabbed him after, I think, Roethlisberger. I think Garoppolo went before him. Goff, I'm pretty sure, went before him. Mahomes went before him.
Wow.
So there was a ton of guys that were, according to Fantasy Pros, were ADP way behind Luck, but they were just getting taken, and it was that factor of the injury. But here you have him finishing out as the 6th overall quarterback, finishing out as in through these 16 weeks overall. So that's huge. It's only like 3 jumps higher, I guess, based on him being 9th overall quarterback taken, but still, the season that he put together was a much welcomed surprise, I feel like, for people who drafted him.
Yeah,
people took that chance on him.
Yeah, there was still that, like, 9th overall was people going. That was like such a, like you just said, people were just like, he was falling off the map in some leagues, and in others there might have been like 1 or 2 guys in every league that were like, no, I want Andrew Luck. I saw it in multiple leagues. It was, I want Andrew Luck here, and in others it was nobody drafted him. And like Fantasy Six Pack League, I think he was like the 12th quarterback taken. I ended up snagging him, and I believe I actually took him right before Kevin did, and Kevin was pissed at me. I took him and Aaron Jones. I wish I drafted better before those picks because my team sucked, but what can you do? But that was like the highlight of my draft was I got those 2 like pretty late, and he started out slow, but he came on super strong. How many games was in a row he threw 3 touchdown passes? Like 6 or 7 or something crazy like that. It was insane. He was so good.
Oh, he was on such a run, man. It was so hard to bench him, and yeah. I did in my 2 quarterback league, the 1 week that cost us the getting into the bigger playoff dance. I benched Luck for Cousins, I think, and he put up a huge number, and we lost by like 0.2 points or something like that.
Sucks.
But yeah, from week 4 through week 12, he had at least 3 touchdowns, and in 4, 6, and 7, he had 4 touchdowns. So, yeah. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. So my quarterback, I know I said I wasn't going after like the top scorer, but you can't not give this guy the fantasy MVP, and it's Pat Mahomes. I mean, absolutely disgusting what he did this year. I mean, 399, almost 400 fantasy points. Clearly the best fantasy player out there this year. And, dude, his ADP was down there in quarterback 16 range. Like, yeah, that's drafted in some leagues, but he was actually undrafted in a few leagues of mine. And if he was drafted, he was like dropped for like a late preseason like injury replacement guy. Like, cause people kind of thought he'd be good, but they weren't really sure. And you were like, well, whatever. I'd rather have a sure thing. And if you took Mahomes, you probably took like a Wentz or something like that in front of him, or like a Cousins or something like that. But I mean, this guy clearly outperformed everything anybody could have imagined. I mean, look, I didn't like him going into the year. I don't think you really liked him going into the year. I thought, what the hell? Like, who is this kid? I know he's got a live arm. I know he has a strong arm. You know, we saw it and we talked about it in the preseason show, that like 70-yard bomb he threw in the preseason. Like, it was ridiculous. But I didn't think the consistency was going to be there. I didn't think the decision making was going to be there. I mean, he was essentially a rookie. He played one game last year, didn't throw any picks, yeah, but didn't throw any interceptions. Looked okay. But this team just was so good with him. He made so many kind of circus plays. He was super entertaining to watch. Like, I was happy every time the Chiefs were on primetime because I get to watch him. And this guy is just crazy good. And it's going to be interesting to see next year where his ADP is. I think it's going to be off the charts high, like probably second round. It's going to be like high, like Aaron Rodgers was like 2 years ago when he was like a second round pick or whatever it was. Like, it's, you know, like Peyton Manning the year after he threw for a crazy number of touchdowns. It's going to be that high. And all I can say is y'all have fun taking him, because I will not. I will never take a quarterback that high, ever. I mean, look at all the guys that got drafted late or undrafted that just outperformed their ADP. You know, we're talking Matt Ryan, Phillip Rivers, Goff, Prescott. All these guys, like, they outperformed the guys in front of them. Or if they didn't outperform it, they performed so close to their value, it didn't matter. And Mahomes, again, best fantasy player of the year. Every team that had him made the playoffs. If you didn't, I don't know how the hell you did.
Yeah, that had to have been the worst draft of all time,
right?
You know, if you managed to
got like, or you literally got hit with every single bad luck injury there was. Like, yeah. You know, you drafted Bell, he never played, right? You drafted, you know, you name it, like, and you got hit with all the major injuries, and you know, Mahomes can't make up for it. But look, Mahomes was crazy good, and you know, again, proof right there. Wait on your quarterback. Not just saying you're gonna get a Pat Mahomes. But if you got somebody like a Rivers or a Ryan was like QB 3 or 4 this year. Like, really? No, nobody thought that. But again, you can get those guys late, and that's why I'm saying wait on quarterbacks. We say it every year. Anyway, man,
he was 3, dude. And you know, speaking of quarterbacks, and then we can bounce. But
yeah.
Like you were saying, like these going out and drafting him super high. I mean, you look at Tom Brady was the 3rd drafted quarterback overall. Cam Newton, the 5th drafted overall. Carson Wentz, 7th overall. Tom Brady finished in 13th. Cam Newton, 10th, so that's good. But he missed, you know, the most important week of them all. And Wentz is kind of a, you know, he definitely missed some time too, so that's hard to predict. But I mean, people went out for these guys early and they burned them. So
yeah, I'll
sit
never
on
do it.
quarterback, man. We preach it every year.
So
So
right, man,
moving on to
back.
running back, I've got quite possibly, one of my favorite players that I owned this year in a league, and he just was such a late flyer because he was the second running back on this team. But Tarek Cohen, man, he was awesome. I mean, he was 34th running back taken, 90 overall, and that's like, I don't know, I can't do the quick math here. I'm trying to scroll back up to where Jordan Howard was 13th and 20th.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a huge discrepancy. Yet, Cohen was just phenomenal, dude. He finished out the year as, why can I not find it, 17th overall. So he absolutely, almost doubled up his positions for where he was. And meanwhile, Jordan Howard finished at 22nd.
Well,
So
that's
he fell.
17 in standard. So go to PPR. I think he was top 10. No, top.
Yeah, you're right. That is standard. So in full
he was top 13.
PPR,
He was 13th.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
I mean that's ridiculous, dude. I mean, and that just shows the difference there too. Between standard and PPR, how these running backs just that are backfield guys, and that's really what I went after Cohen for, because he showed that flash last year. Towards the end of even middle to end of the year. He was a huge waiver wire pickup that helped a lot of teams in the playoffs because he was just getting all these backfield, passes and just killing it in PPR and even in half PPR. So he's my pick for running back.
Yeah, that's a great one. I'm going with a little bit higher of a drafted player than what you did, and that is Christian McCaffrey. Yeah, he was a second-round pick, but this guy finished as the top running back in PPR leagues. I mean, week in and week out, this guy just crushed. And, he passed. I mean, he passed literally everybody that was drafted in front of him. So to me, it's hard to not call him the MVP. I had Cohen on my short list of guys. There's a couple other players that I had on my short list, but just looking at all the guys there, especially early on, that got taken and he just jumped over. He made a big difference for teams that, if you took a wide receiver in round one and then took him, you got an RB1. If you took a running back in round one and then took Christian McCaffrey in round one, if both guys hit, you had two running back ones. Like two. Easily two. I mean, that is phenomenal value, and I know a lot of Christian McCaffrey owners that made the playoffs too. So, all right, moving on to wide receiver, man. What you got?
All right, so wide receiver, there's a couple here that I liked. Juju Smith-Schuster is definitely a huge honorable mention guy because he was drafted so much later, but he came on so much last year too, and really shined in that complementary role to AB. But I mean, dude, he was looking at 16th receiver overall, 41st or 41st overall pick, 16th receiver taken, and he finished out. Let me go back to PPR here. Dude, he finishes out at 8.
Yeah.
I mean, Brown's second. I mean, that's absurd, dude. That's a huge jump. But the guy that I really like here is the one right behind him who finished overall 9, and that's Mr. Robert Woods. Woods, meanwhile, was drafted way behind Juju.
Well,
way behind him. 32nd receiver taken off the board at 86 overall.
Way behind his teammates, too.
Yeah. And I mean, just looking at the stats that he put up, I mean, we talk about consistency all the time. Bob Lung, friend of the show that we have on every year,
Mm-hmm.
He lives and breathes consistency, and Robert Woods is like exactly the guy that he's talking about. Week one was the only week that he had where it was a single digit scoring week. Every other week was double digits. Now, mind you, he only had 300-yard games this season, and that was in weeks 3, 4, and 6. But he also didn't really get you touchdowns. He had 2 in week 3, 1 in week 4, and then he went on a stretch all the way down to week 11 was his next touchdown. But, playoffs, he had a touchdown in week 13 to get you into the playoffs, nothing in the first 2 weeks, and then got one again last week. But it's his volume of receptions. The guy had no less than 4 receptions all but that first week. So, I mean, 4 he only had in 2 weeks. Then he had at least 5 receptions every other week of the season. I mean, that's what you want out of a receiver. That's what you need to have. That consistency is what we talk about all the time, and that's a perfect example of it. I loved Robert Woods this year.
Yeah, he was definitely solid. Not to toot my own horn here, but I picked him as a sleeper. I forget where I wrote it. It might have been on the site. I haven't looked it up, but I remember writing about it somewhere. It might have been on Fantasy Pros. It might have just been on the podcast we talked about it, but I specifically remember saying, like, why is his ADP so low? Does anybody remember that he was actually like 1,000-yard receiver or almost 1,000-yard receiver in like 8 games last year? I mean, he was crazy good. So, I think people just got scared off with, just so many weapons there and just thought maybe it was a fluke. And I don't know. I thought he was a good player. So I thought maybe he would still, I didn't know he'd be that good, but I thought he would outperform where his ADP was. But mine for the season is going to be Devontae Adams. Yes, another high draft pick guy. But we're talking like late second round at best. I saw him go early third round in a couple leagues, and yeah, he was helped out by Cobb being injured all year, and totally blanking on the other guy that got hurt for Green Bay right now. But who? I said Cobb.
Cobb.
No,
Oh,
I
you
said
said
Cobb.
Cobb. I'm sorry.
Geronimo Allison.
Yeah, Allison.
He was hurt but look, we all knew Adams was the guy, right? And so, I mean, 1,300 yards, 13 touchdowns, crazy numbers, right? He was absolutely underdrafted, and what was he? Like I said, he was late second, early third. He finished, by the way, running wide receiver 1 in PPR leagues in front of Mr. Antonio Brown. I mean,
Yeah, he was 6th overall. Sixth receiver taken. Sorry, 18th overall.
Yeah, but I mean, like, and that was ADP. So I think, I'm looking at PPR leagues right now for ADP, and he went down in PPR leagues. He goes down to 7th receiver. Keenan Allen jumps him, but his ADP for receivers, jumps anywhere between 8 and 7, and his overall for PPR jumps anywhere between 21 to 18, to 19, stuff like that. So, yeah, it's like I said, he was a late second rounder, maybe mid second rounder, but I mean, he finished wide receiver 1. So if you were able to kind of think about starting your draft like this, like you could have potentially taken like a Kamara and come back around and gotten Devontae Adams. I mean, how gross would that start be?
It was. That's what I did in the Fantasy Six Pack League.
There you go. And I mean,
Didn't help me much. The
didn't
rest of
help
my team
you,
sucked.
but
But
you could have gotten Barkley and Adams. I mean, Barkley was on my short list for running backs. I mean, like nobody thought he was going to do that well. Like he passed so many guys. Like, but again, like he was just so consistent week in and week out. Clearly the favorite target for Aaron Rodgers. Just blew up. Even weeks that Aaron Rodgers didn't do well, like Adams just still performed because he was catching passes. He was catching the only touchdown pass that Rodgers threw, like every single week. So my MVP for receiver is there, and I'm gonna go with who I believe is the only real MVP for tight end, because one of our other kind of things about the tight end position, or for the MVPs that we didn't mention, is that collectively between me and AJ, we said they have to be drafted players, like, consensus drafted. Yeah, there's a lot of guys that outperform their ADP because they don't have a real ADP. They were basically undrafted players. So, of course. But that's why we made the all-waiver team. So, for drafted players, and this guy was literally on the cusp of not being a drafted player because the tight end position was that bad. And people just, I don't know why. Like, I loved this guy, but then I think I let bias get me, like industry bias get me, and I didn't draft him anywhere except for one league, and I'm hating myself for it. But early on, I loved this guy, and I didn't have any early drafts, so I didn't get him. George Kittle, dude, absolutely amazing. Even with Garoppolo going out, still just was a stud. And in a tight end position that was awful, besides Kelsey and Ertz, he was literally like, so if you count 1A and 1B as Ertz and Kelsey and Ertz, or Ertz and Kelsey, whichever order you want to put those two in. Dude, Kittle was like 1D, maybe? We'll skip a letter. Like he was right there with them. But he was, I mean, his ADP for tight ends was, for PPR leagues, God, I mean, Kittle... Oh, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Kittle for tight ends, PPR scoring, he was the 14th tight end taken. I mean, I play in a lot of leagues where people don't take two tight ends. So in a lot of leagues, he was not taken. But also in a lot of my leagues, players like O.J. Howard, Brait, guys like that were drafted ahead of him. So Benjamin Watson was drafted ahead of him, and your boy. People
I
took
loved Ben Watson this year, and he totally let me down.
I mean, people took Gesicki over him because people just thought, hey, the rookie, he's gonna do it, and I get it. I get the hype, but dude, Kittle was money last year at the toward the end, in the middle to the end of the season, he was so good, and I'm killing myself for not taking him in more places, and he was tight end number 3, all said and done. So, I don't know if you really have another guy who was like legitimately drafted across the board that could be like an MVP. I mean, I feel like all the guys that were drafted just kind of fell into place or were well below where they were drafted, except for Kittle and Ertz, or I keep saying Kittle and Ertz, Kelsey and Ertz.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I've got a guy real quick. I've missed my note here. I wanted to give a quick shout out to, I guess, foe of the show, Mr. Amari Cooper, who both of us are always down on. And, he was drafted in PPR, full PPR, 15th overall. 15th receiver, 34th overall. Keep doing that. And he managed to finish in PPR at 17th. So, I mean, he's consistent. He almost met his ADP, but you really have to look at his season to see how that came to be. And he really was a lot better down the stretch
Yeah,
than
he's more like a
than
second half
where
MVP.
he was, early. And that just says a lot that trade really boosted his value so much more to get him to that point. I mean, he only had 2 double-digit scores through the first 7 weeks before the bye week. And I can't remember exactly which week he got traded, but in week 6 and 7, he had 0. So I feel like maybe that's about the time he got traded. And then Tennessee
Well,
was the first week.
I think he was hurt those games.
Maybe that's what it
I'm not
was then.
remembering either. So yeah, I think he was hurt week 6 and 7. He finally got traded, and then yeah, I mean he was. Look,
Yeah, because he was
he was
definitely
way
against
better.
Tennessee in week 9 was when he started with Dallas. His first game with Dallas, at least.
Yeah, and I mean he was consistent down the stretch. Although I will say this about Cooper, he kind of showed him. He kind of went back to his. He had 2 look. Let's look at this for instance. 2 dismal games with Oakland, right? And 2 blow-up games with Oakland early on. 21 and 26 points PPR. Then he came in, and he was way more consistent. I'll give him this. But 16, 13, good, solid. You'll take it. 6. Then a 38. Awesome, right? Like, you're like, oh my God, this guy's amazing. Then he goes back to 13. All right, cool. Hey, you'll take it. Then 49, almost 50. Like, oh my God, this dude's the best.
But then he comes back. That was 3 touchdowns. Right. Let's throw that out. Because that was
217 yards, 10 receptions. But then, here's the Amari Cooper. Here's the Amari Cooper that I know and love. I love to hate. 8 and 6 in the fantasy playoffs against freaking Indy and Tampa Bay. Come on, man.
That's bad.
This is the inconsistency that I absolutely. Cooper had more blow-up games. I guarantee you, we're going to talk to Bob again next year in the consistency ratings, and Bob is going to destroy Amari Cooper. There's no way you can't. His consistency is terrible. He was more consistent down the stretch, I will give you that. And yes, he probably propelled some teams into the playoffs because of his week 12 and his week 14. Week 14 was week 1 of a lot of teams' playoffs. But when you then pass that, you get almost nothing from him. It's just, I don't know, man. I will take Amari Cooper if he falls to like the 10th round, and he never will. So you all have fun taking Amari Cooper in the 4th round and dealing with his on-again and off-again schedule and having, good luck figuring out which week he destroys it. I can't do it, and, a guy that's similar, but I think at probably 2 tiers above him, so his lows aren't quite the same. But, Tyreek Hill is kind of in that same boat, man. Like, Tyreek Hill's awesome games are like, oh my God, he's the best receiver ever. But his low games, 10, 6, 8, 7, I mean, they're fine.
Dude, they hurt.
They crush you,
They came at a bad time. I mean, granted, he was fighting off some injuries, so, I get that. But dude, he had so many great games, and he's a lot. I mean, him and Kelsey are really the main reason of Mahomes' success. But I drafted Hill in the 3rd round on the turn, and he was drafted. His ADP was 10th receiver off the board, so it falls in line. But dude, he finished out. God,
he's still wide receiver 5 in PPR leagues. I mean, he's still he is 6, one of those potential MVP candidates. But for me, he was on that short list of MVP candidates. But his consistency, his up and down play, made me go, nah. Like I'll tell you, the guy who won my work league, right, had a bunch of these like home run hitter or bust guys, but he had so many of them that even if he only had 3 of them hit, because when those guys hit, they're 30 to 40 points, right? when they hit, they make your week. And if you have 3 of those guys or even 4 of those guys hit, you have 100 points. Then you just need another 30 from the rest of your team. And you're probably going to win most weeks, right? So that's the thing. That's how this guy won the league. And kudos to him, man. That was a great strategy. I have never thought about hitting a bunch of boomer bust guys like that because I'm afraid they're all going to bust on me on the same week. But, he happened to get all those guys, but, he had the Tyreek Hills, he had the Christian McCaffreys. Christian McCaffrey was not a bust this year at all. He was super consistent. But, he had all those guys that were you never know what you were going to get from week to week, and you just hope the guy they all didn't bust on the same week, especially when it counted. And it didn't for him, and he won the league. But, so when you talk about Cooper, I always think of Cooper and Hill and guys like that. They're so talented, they're so good. They're gonna have these amazing games, but their overall season total, their per game average is so skewed because they have weeks 30. Look at Hill, 42, 39, 32, 43. You mean to tell me those 4 games didn't move the needle? In the positive for him so much, but it mattered because it makes his overall point total so much higher because he has 4 just completely blown up games, and Cooper's the same way. So I value consistency a lot, and I can't possibly take these guys where their ADP is going to be next year, and I might lose because of it, but I think overall my strategy works in most leagues, and it blows up in my face in others, but whatever. Anyway, man, so we were talking about tight ends. You brought up Amari Cooper, and I hate you for it because, it always gets me going. All right, so
You're welcome.
Thank you, man. So let's get going here. All-Waiver team. So a little bit different here. So it kind of wait. You don't have a tight end. He's on your All-Waiver team.
I still have a tight end.
No, you don't. He's on your All-Waiver team.
Dude, he was drafted. No. Never mind.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. All-Waiver team. So these are guys that were in most leagues not drafted, right? And, look, we get it. You guys are all in different leagues, 2 QB leagues, multi-flex leagues, dynasty leagues. I get it, but let's look at the majority of leagues here, right? And these were guys that clearly just were in all, for all purposes, right? These guys were MVPs because these were guys you picked up for free. The consistency still matters for these guys, but not quite as much because, look, you got them for free. You're still getting, let's just say, running back 2 value for a guy you picked up off the waiver wire. Wide receiver 2, 3 value for a guy you picked up off the waiver wire. Even if you picked up a tight end that, a couple weeks he'll give you 5 points, but those weeks he gives you 12 to 20. I mean, you weren't getting that from anybody else you probably drafted unless you drafted Kelsey, Kittle, Ertz, etc. So these guys, the all-waiver team, were huge factors for teams making the playoffs. And I'll start here with Matt Ryan and my quarterback. So obviously Matt Ryan, I just said it. Literally you could flip my MVP and the all-waiver team pick here for quarterback with Mahomes, because Mahomes wasn't drafted in a lot of leagues either. Ryan was QB 13, but he literally wasn't drafted in most of my leagues. But Matt Ryan still ended up finishing as QB number 3 on the year. He had his ups and downs. He had some kind of meh games, but overall, dude, he was really solid. And he was picked up in a lot of leagues. After a couple of weeks, it was finally all right, maybe this is Matt Ryan we remember from a couple of years ago. And he finally, later on this season, Julio Jones owners were finally loving him because he was finally end zone. But that's my guy. So what you got for all-waiver team for quarterback?
All-waiver team, initially I was leaning towards Jared Goff, but I mean, he was drafted 15th quarterback, so I feel like he was definitely one of the first backup quarterbacks taken.
Yeah.
But he finished out at ninth, which is fantastic, and we all know how good the LA Rams are this year. But the guy I really liked here is actually Mitch Trubisky. He finished out 14th overall, which still in a 12-team league, obviously puts him out of the top 12 quarterbacks for the league. But this is a guy that was probably a complete afterthought, or definitely like an extreme backup taken at 176 overall, 24th quarterback. So he just makes the cut in 12-team leagues. But you also got to look at the fact that he missed 2 weeks in 12
absolutely.
and 13 against a Detroit team who, he managed to put up 36 points against in week 10.
They were a solid pass defense too, Detroit.
And they were a very good pass defense, exactly. But he absolutely decimated them that week. So he misses that game in Detroit. I don't think he would have put up the same number, but he could have easily been, serviceable. And then at New York Giants in week 13, again, aside from Landon Collins, who may have even been injured by week 13, I can't remember when he went out. He could have had a great game there. So when you're looking at that, that puts him above Tom Brady, back into 13th, and very well could have been close to putting him above Kirk Cousins. So, and maybe Phillip Rivers. He was 20 points behind Cousins, just under 20 points, and then like 22, 23 points behind Rivers. So those 2 games, I mean, he could be sitting where Jared Goff is at 9. So, he was definitely my sleeper pick. Not my sleeper pick, but my choice here for a waiver pickup that just really came on and led this team.
Yeah, no, he was a good one. A little inconsistent, but overall very solid. Definitely a streamer play. So my running back, probably the most obvious waiver team pickup, addition here is Philip Lindsay. I think guy was an afterthought until probably week 1, week 2, week 3. I mean, a lot of people still believed in Royce Freeman for so long. But, dude, Philip Lindsay just ran away with this team, this backfield, like literally. And, finished out, unfortunately had the injuries, so burned a bunch of people at the end here. But, I mean, you can't knock what this guy did at all year long for you. He probably carried a bunch of teams to the championship, finishing as RB12. That's, dude, you can't ask for almost anything more from a waiver wire pickup, dude. So Philip Lindsay, I hope you're healthy starting next year and we can draft you where you belong.
Yeah, he was phenomenal, and I rode him all the way to 3rd place.
Hey man,
but I'm fine with it as a flex play, mind you. So
yeah, absolutely.
My running back here, I'm gonna go with Chubb. I mean, now the interesting thing with him is that everybody was really high on him, from a drafting standpoint, but he was terrible to start the season. So, everybody, what's that?
He didn't play.
He just didn't play. But, people were looking at him, everybody went after Duke Johnson, but he was at, 43rd running back taken, 118 overall. So he was getting drafted, but he doesn't play. And then they fire the coach, and then boom, here he is. Chubb's on the scene, and he's just has a monster outpouring of points, and that led to him finishing 15th running back overall. So that was amazing. Just what he's done, really in half a season.
Yeah, dude, he was awesome. He should have started from the season, from the get-go, man. I never really understood why they used Carlos Hyde. Anyway, my receiver, Tyler Boyd, had some consistency issues down the stretch, but, I mean, overall was still really good. Yep. he was basically not drafted in every league, and for good reason. I mean, he was pretty terrible for the past couple of years. But ended up finishing as wide receiver 15, and that's even with kind of meh season weeks down the stretch. And look, he got hurt the last couple weeks too, so that's something to be said for it too. But yeah, I mean, just phenomenal games down here here to the all season really. Kind of like I said, started falling apart near the end, but that was more of a Dalton got hurt. Not that Dalton's awesome, but I mean Driscoll clearly is not the answer. So, but Boyd was still able to produce even with all of that, and he gets my all-waiver selection there.
Yeah, I like Boyd a lot. He really had a handful of good games early, and then you had the A.J. Green injury, and like you said, you had the QB go down too. So. But my pick here, it was kind of a toss-up between a couple of guys, but I really got to go with Tyler Lockett. I mean, he just showed up every week, and Doug Baldwin really was injured coming into the season, so I definitely think that helped out with Lockett's overall output. Baldwin was still looked at as 16th receiver off the board, and he was one of the guys I picked. Probably, I think I had him in third round of the fantasy six-pack league, and he burned me because he was injured so much. But Lockett was all the way down the 54th receiver taken, 143rd overall,
which is
and
pretty much not drafted in a lot of leagues.
Yeah.
So.
But then he comes up and he finishes at 18th. I mean, that's absurd, dude. And then if you play in a league with returns too, he would have been even higher than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, and he's right behind your best buddy here, Amari Cooper. I mean, solid play all around. I've always liked Lockett. Watching him play the past few years, and he's just a talented guy. So That's my pick.
Good one. So finishing off here with tight end, I'm going with Mr. Eric Ebron. Kind of an afterthought. He kind of fizzled out in Detroit. Never was really able to get to that level that so many people thought he was going to. He showed every once in a while he'd have a game where you're like, yeah, that's Eric Ebron. That's who I thought he was. And then it'd be like 6 weeks of nothing. Comes into Indy, and you're like, well, great. Now he's the second tight end for Indy, because clearly this was Jack Doyle's position. Indy can run 2 tight end sets, and we knew that. We've known that for years. But Doyle was going to get the lion's share of the targets. We knew that. Ebron was going to be tight end dependent. Well, injury to Doyle happened, and Ebron just flourished. And Luck loved him, clearly. And, you mentioned Luck is your MVP for quarterbacks. And, those two plus T.Y. Hilton is what made that offense go. And, Marlon Mack was there, but, he was a product of a lot of touchdowns and things like that, too, which, those Ebron and Luck got them there, but Ebron was so good all year long, and he was not drafted almost anywhere that I knew of. So he's my waiver team tight end to finish it out.
Yeah, I loved Ebron this year, man. He was absolutely phenomenal once Doyle was out for those first few weeks, and he really kept it going once Doyle came back, and then went out again.
Yep.
So. The pick I got here is actually the 18th overall, 18th tight end, 182nd overall. Jeez. All right. Thankfully, it's the last time I can do that. And that is Jared Cook. So, again, a complete afterthought. Most people are not drafting backup tight ends unless you're in a really deep league and you need to get the depth while you can in the draft. But you look at the guys right behind him. You got Cam Brate, you got Charles Clay, you got Ben Watson, who I loved this year, and he totally let me down. Ricky Seals-Jones, Mike Gesicki, a rookie in Miami. These are all guys that were – some of these guys were drafted, ahead of Cook as a backup in some leagues that I was in. And then you look at Cook, he finished right behind Ebron at 5th overall. I mean, with as bad as the tight end position was this year, like, this is a guy that you needed. Mr. Trey Burton, the one of the main cogs of the Philly special play, goes to Chicago, and I had huge hopes for him this year as well. He was such a letdown. It was embarrassing almost. I mean, he finished at 8th overall, which is great for, a 12-team league, even a 10-team league. It's like borderline, but dude, he just wasn't there. Gronk finishing 10th overall. I mean, these are all guys that were drafted way ahead of this guy. O.J. Howard was another like good breakout towards late. Jimmy Graham was somebody that was drafted ahead of him. Jordan Reed, granted, he had his usual injuries, at the end of the season this year
Reed
for once.
Normally, it was actually healthy a lot.
But
it was just that offense.
He was healthy this year, and he didn't do anything.
The offense was so bad.
That offense was atrocious.
They misused him big time, which probably kept him healthy, honestly.
Evan Ingram is another one.
He was injured
drafted
a bunch.
Super high. Injuries slowed him a bit, but dude, he just wasn't getting the ball.
Yeah, Jared Cook's a good one. I like that one a lot.
He was phenomenal.
Anyway, man, that is it for the show. I want to say congratulations to everybody who finished in the money, won their leagues. Hopefully we were able to help you. I'm sure you're not listening to us if we didn't. But AJ and I are going to take some time off. It's been a long season. And we'll get back to you probably. I would probably say early February at the latest. But give us some give us some time off. We'll prep for baseball and get you going. I may throw in a random basketball one, and AJ's telling me I've got to show and end the show with some different music here. We usually do the outro music here with sort of the same intro, but we'll do the what do we call this? We call this like the Joe Bob rant or something like that.
Music.
Yeah, the Cup of Joe. The Cup of Joe cafe music here. So we will finish the season and finish 2018. So Happy New Year, everybody, with some smooth jazz. All right. So see you all
Congrats
next year.
Yeah.